There are many tales to be told of the Great Lakes, the ships that have sailed them, and the captains who guided the cargo and crews across those oft-time turbulent waters. Today I will tell you the story of one ship, the first to ever navigate the Upper Lakes and Lake Erie. Its name was Walk in the Water, and her journeys took shape at Black Rock, New York, near Buffalo. To be clear, there were two earlier steamers, the Frontenac, a Canadian trader, and the Ontario, which was an American vessel. They had operated between 1816 and 1817, but strictly on the lower Lake Ontario. There are reports of a side-wheeler known as the Accommodation having operated at the St. Lawrence River between Montreal and Quebec in 1809, which was a few years before the aforementioned Frontenac and Ontario were even built. Now, the Walk in the Water was named using a comment a Native American had made upon seeing Robert Fulton's Clermont operating on the Hudson River. It must have been an astounding sight for these people whose main transportation was water, but was in dugout canoes and, of course, the often romanticized birch bark canoes. And there were canoes that were made out of bark other than birch too, but probably primarily the dugouts. So anyways, it must have been an astounding sight for those people. The Walk in the Water was built to be a passenger and freight carrier, and she launched on May 28, 1818. The construction was overseen by a New York shipbuilder, Noah Brown, and the well-known Robert Fulton was charged with the power installation. As history recalls, in 1807, Mr. Fulton made a run on the Hudson River with his Clermont, the first accepted steamboat trip anywhere. And the Walk in the Water, launching in the Niagara River, did not go, though, exactly as intended at first. Her power was not adequate for her to make way against the river's very fast current to allow her entry into Lake Erie. So a more humble source of power was employed to assist. A team of 20 yoke of oxen were used. Ropes were attached to the steamer, and the oxen walked the towpath which led to the lake. And the oxen towing became known as a horn breeze. And that is how the first steamer entered into Lake Erie. Now, she was a curious cross between a steamer and a sailing craft, carrying two tall masts, and was fitted with a square-rigged foresail. Looking like a sort of hybrid, her smokestack was midship between the two masts, and two large paddle boxes housing the paddle wheels were spot on exactly midship. In total, the length was around 150 feet, 30 feet beam with a depth of about 8 feet. She weighed in at 338 tons. 338 tons, pardon me. On her bow was a carved figurehead of Commander Oliver Hazard Perry. All the passengers' rooms were below deck. A special cabin for women was partitioned off in the forward part of the ship, and after that were the men's quarters, then a small dining room, and then a tiny smoking room and adjoining baggage room. Steam whistles were not yet on the scene until 1843, so the Walk in the Water was equipped with a small cannon mounted on the foredeck and was used as a signal. It was always fired right before docking to let the people of the port know she had arrived, and it was custom to also fire the cannon upon their departure. The first trip took her to Detroit with stops at Dunkirk, Erie, and Cleveland, and that first trip was quite an event indeed. The captain was Joe Fish, who was a Hudson River boatman. Now he appeared decked out in a brand new uniform, and it is said with lots of decoration. And probably he stood up on the paddle box directing the engineer until the Walk in the Water was well out into Lake Erie. Now that first trip began on August 23, 1818, with 29 paying passengers. Cabin fare was rather pricey for the time. Remember, this is 1818. $8 to Erie, $15 to Cleveland, and $24 to Detroit. I need to convert that and see what that would be in 2021 currency. The citizens of Detroit were excited indeed, as you can imagine, and who could blame them? Judge Augustus Woodward, as well as many prominent Detroiters, made their way to the river to board the steamers. The new Hudson's Wharf had just been built at the foot of Bates Street, and it was built specially for this new steamer. As you might imagine, for such a momentous event, the dock and riverbanks were crowded long before the Walk in the Water was ever in sight. So it was on that morning of August 26, 1818, that the first steamer did indeed arrive at Detroit. Now it's interesting to note, even though it's not connected with the steamer, that 1 year later, in 1819, the Treaty of Saginaw was signed only 100 and some miles north of Detroit. So the area was still pretty much a wilderness and was pretty much inhabited by the Native American Indians, and so the white Europeans were just beginning their encroachment upon the Native American lands. Now in June 1820, the steamer went much further north. In fact, she went the full length of Lake Huron, landing at Mackinac Island. Her passengers on the trip was a troop of United States soldiers that were probably going to be stationed there at Fort Mackinac. Things went well for Walk in the Water. In fact, in the 1821 season, she was operating on Lake Erie late into the season. And on October 31st, 1821, loaded at Black Rock with passengers and some freight, she cleared port about 4 in the afternoon on her way to Cleveland and then to Detroit. Luck was not with her that afternoon. The boat had just passed Buffalo when suddenly a violent wind caught her with all of its fierceness, and the captain, Jedediah Rogers, was in charge at that time. At around 8, Captain Rogers headed back for Buffalo as he had learned water was entering the hull through openings in the planking. And faster than her pumps could remove it, it was coming in indeed. He was not able to make Buffalo, so he decided to drop anchor and hopefully to be able to ride out the wicked winds right where he was at. 3 anchors were hoisted over, one secured by a chain and the other 2 by ropes. The night was a horror to all on board, and the crew struggled to keep the storm-tossed Walk in the Water afloat. And it must have been horrifying to be in that kind of a situation. Later, around 10, 1 anchor rope broke, and a few hours later, around midnight, the second rope broke. The chained anchor alone could not hold her against the gale, and Walk in the Water was dragged slowly towards the shore, and by God's grace, not out into the open water where it would have truly become a tragedy. At around 4:30 the following morning, November 1st, the ship's bottom scraped the shore sands near Point Abino, not far from Buffalo. With the coming of dawn's light, the winds finally began to subside. A line was taken ashore and the boat secured to a large tree there, and thankfully not a single life was lost in what could have been a very, very tragic event. This, however, ended the career of the first steamer on the Upper Great Lakes. The furniture, fixtures, and engines were rescued. In fact, the engines were reconditioned and were used in the steamboat, the Superior. Interestingly, the Superior met a similar fate as the Walk in the Water did. And once again, the engines were saved and were used on the Charles Townsend, where they saw long service. And when it was removed from that ship, the main cylinder was removed and served as a blowing cylinder ashore in an engine works in Buffalo, New York. Reports claim that the cylinder was still being used daily as late as 1902. That was craftsmanship. Quite a remarkable story, and I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoy all the stories on the Great Lakes. I spent a great deal of my life on the Lake Huron shore up by Oscoda and Tawas, and one late fall and winter actually on Tawas Bay on the shore. And let me tell you, the winds whipped up ferociously. Standing on the shore, I saw 6 to 7 foot waves, and it was impressive. And to imagine being out on a ship in waves that were even bigger at that early time when there was no one to come and rescue you is a sobering thought indeed. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up, because it helps Charlie Cat and I a lot. It helps the channel, and it helps us know that you're liking what you're seeing. And if you've not done so yet, please take this as your personal invitation to subscribe to the Dennis Morrison channel and Charlie Cat Productions. Release usually 2 to 3 videos, well, usually 3 to 4 videos a week. And I hope you'll join me for some of the others. I love each and every one of you on the other side of that TV, or on the other side of that computer monitor. And I pray that you stay safe, healthy, and blessed. And I'll see you again